Hi there, and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans, and where the content is free. It is episode 134 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the sort of main show that we have on a Sunday night. I'm your host, I'm Colin Armstrong. As always, guys, as I say every week, it's not just the pod we have here at Gersnet. We've got forums, we've got match previews, match reviews, articles, all that kind of thing. There's a history archive on the website, and Frankie's got his social media as well, obviously. If it's your first time listening to the pod, we would ask you to subscribe, put the word out there on social media, let people know that we're there. We're live tonight. It's a Sunday night. We'll be looking at the Rangers-Hibs game today. Rangers won 1-2-1 today at Ibrox against Hibs, so we'll have a wee look at that. But the pod will be available to download or stream from a variety of platforms tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, all the usual places you get your pods, guys. And now to bring in my guests, two sort of stalwarts. I should point out, actually, I noticed the other day there, it's April is our birthday, so I think it's our third birthday this month, and these guys have been here for pretty much all of it. So it's David Wren and Stewart Weir. So how are you, David? What have you been up to?
Well, good, thanks. Not a lot, really. It's just
that killed that conversation. It's done dead, isn't it?
It's been a strange one though, because I felt like the football's been kind of, for 2 games in 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So it's been a wee bit strange because we're used to having 2 or 3 games, all these preview shows and all sorts. So, but it's good to be back tonight, and I think it'll be a good show after another good result today.
Have you been at the Barbers? You look a bit shorn at the side there.
I have been. It was my big return yesterday in Haddington. Hoy Barbers, we shout out for them.
All right. Did you have the queue?
No, I booked ahead, but it was well overdue. I was a bit kind of embarrassed going in because I knew the amount of hail that was going to get all over the floor. But much appreciated from them to get the Barnet sorted out, because it was getting beyond the joke.
Yeah, I'm hopefully going to get that sweet. Not that I've got the same sort of hair issues as yourself. I'm at the other stage of that particular journey, but it's still, especially at the back and at the sides, it's getting a bit horrific. But the one that I go to, it opened last Monday, 6 a.m. it opened it, and it was queued around the street. Apparently, it was just ridiculous. So I've kind of thought I'll give it a few days and let it calm down. And we've also got Stewart Weir. He looks like he's had a trim as well. Have you been at the Barbers this week, Stewart?
I've had more than a trim. I've had a substantial piece of engineering done on the old head here. There were a couple of Turkish barbers rubbing their hands in anticipation. In fact, the 2 of them on me on at the same time, cutting from different ends. Obviously, they were on piecework or bonus, one of the 2. But it had gone a wee bit too long. When people start making reference to me and similarities to Fred West, I think it's time then to get the haircut.
I went to a Turkish Barbers in Union Street a couple of times in Glasgow. They're quite aggressive.
Yeah.
There was a stage in the process of this isn't a haircut, this is a kicking I'm getting here.
Aye. You're never quite sure whether you're actually getting a haircut or whether they're just aiming for your ears.
Aye.
You could lose an ear quite easily. In fact, there was one guy I used to go to. I wouldn't shave for a bit, maybe near enough a fortnight. When I used to go to Turkey on holiday, just so I could go for a haircut and a shave. And then this wee guy, his nickname was Chico Bastard, and that had been given to him by the locals. And as you say, I mean, it was a kind of short backsides and GBH all thrown in as one. And then all of a sudden he likes a couple of flares and starts.
I don't even want to go down that road. The old nose hair thing. No. They asked me about that, and I was like, "No, you're all right. If I'm coming out with a burst lip for a haircut, then I'll give the old nasal hair a miss. Thanks very much." So hopefully, if I'm on next week, I'll look a bit trimmer. I feel like I've let the side down. Everybody's got a haircut by me. Anyway, right, guys, on to the sort of job in hand. Obviously, the game today. And not an overly convincing performance for Rangers. You could maybe argue that Hibs maybe deserved a draw out. I think we had more of the ball overall, but I could maybe argue that they had maybe the better chances during the game. David, I'll come to you first. I was quite interested in the team selection today. I had sort of thought that, based on sort of Steven Gerrard's previous comments, that he would use the remaining sort of 5 league games, to give some of the fringe players a few minutes. It seemed to me he went with sort of strongest 11 today, or strongest available 11. It kind of feels that, it felt to me anyway, that it was maybe a wee statement of intent regarding this finish the season undefeated. How did you see it?
Yeah, I thought when I saw the team, I expected us to go out and dominate the game, and it didn't quite work out as you mentioned. But I thought for spells in the game we were pretty dominant. I thought we did some, played some nice stuff at times, but it was just in sort of short bursts of 30 seconds a minute here and there, rather than sustaining that over a period of time in the game. So. Yeah, and I think, the team, I wasn't convinced in a couple of areas today. I thought Barisic had his worst game in a long time. I thought positionally especially, he's getting caught out all the time. I felt like Boyle gave him a right tough afternoon. I like Boyle as a player. I think he's, he offers a lot to Hibs, and he's a massive player for them. And it just looked like Barisic struggled with that intensity and that pace down the right-hand side. And I think a lot of it was him falling asleep and maybe being a bit, not quite understanding the threat that Boyle posed, I suppose. And I thought up front with Roof and Morelos, I didn't think that particularly worked today. I felt like they were both maybe trying to do the same thing too often. So yeah, but listen, we got the 3 points. But no, as you say, I mean, I would have liked to have seen Scott Wright get some time in the pitch. I've been banging on about this for weeks, but I thought, when I watched the Cove Rangers game last week, what came into my head straight after that was, what if we had, Scott Wright on one side and Ryan Kent the other? What would that look like? I don't know. I don't know if they would sort of cancel each other out in many ways, because they're quite similar players. But I would love to see that. But maybe Gerrard just felt today, given he rested some players last week, that today was a day to play all the best players available, which is fair enough. But I just thought there was something a wee bit missing today. But again, a lot of that could be down to Hibs and how they played, because I think they've got a decent team. They've got a lot of kind of experienced players and a couple of good young players like the boy Doig. So yeah, it was 3 points. It was pretty much, it probably will be the toughest game we'll face. In the post-split fixtures, I think, as well as maybe Celtic, but certainly Hibs have been a really consistent team this season, so we can be happy with the result and happy getting the 3 points. But yeah, I think performance-wise, it could certainly have been better.
Can I confirm you're not just talking up Martin Boyle because you share the same coffee shop in Haddington?
Well, interestingly enough, I did come to me today, and by coffee shop, it's the Costa that's adjoined to Tesco in Haddington, so it's not really that glamorous. I did see him in there before a game around about Christmas time, so he was quite struck when he saw me.
I don't know.
So on the Gersnet podcast.
They were like the top guy, the top man, say, not just anyone, just the top guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Anyway, right. Stuart, moving on to you.
my only story about meeting footballers allegedly would be in Hamilton about 2 Christmases ago, when Scott Allen and Johnny Russell were sitting having their mocha chocolate fruit salads, and they sat there for ages, and I'm thinking to myself, you're nothing but a miserable pair of, because I think they made the one coffee last about 3 hours. Meanwhile, I'd made up for them. I was on about my 6th or 7th and began, I hope they say something that I may be overhear here. No, but I never realised we were also in the amongst the celebrities of Haddington. That's, you put David right up my estimation.
Well, there only is 2. There's him and Martin Boyle. That's it. You know what I mean? Anyway, sure. On to the game today. 17 games at home now. 17-1. Scored 49. Conceded 3. I know we didn't play particularly well today. I wouldn't want to say we played badly as such. I don't think that's the case. I wouldn't want to overstate the mark. I just think we looked, especially towards the ends of both halves, we looked a bit slack, and things, as David said, they didn't quite go the way we maybe wanted them to go. But I mean, that record, played 17, won 17, scored 49, conceded 3. I mean, the only downside about that form is none of us have been in the ground to see it, but it's remarkable consistency. I mean, it really is.
I do wonder if nobody being in there to actually watch these performances have made it easier for Rangers at home this season. Nobody's on their back. Various guys can actually get to play the game or play their game rather than bow to the demands of the fans. It's got to be interesting to see what happens as soon as any kind of fans come back in any numbers, just how the performances go. But today, I thought it was a workmanlike performance from Rangers. You also have to take into account Hibs are, on league form, are the third best team in Scotland. There is an absolute Irish mile between Rangers and their points tally and where Hibs are. And I think it's easy to forget that Hibs have actually been quite consistent and played quite well this season. Don't get me wrong, they've become some complete aberrations that have lasted more than a week or a fortnight. But I think, Hibs are a useful team. They do have some good players, some decent players. I think the problem with Hibs is quite often these decent players play almost on their own. They don't play as a collective. I think if you come away from a Hibs game, sometimes you actually pick on the highlights of individual performances rather than as a team effort. And I think that's where they're maybe let down this season. But, Rangers have been relentless. I think in some ways today went to plan, and as much as they got a goal, which meant that they weren't panicking, they got a goal early enough that meant that they were in control. It also meant that they weren't having to chase the game at any point in time and could basically get back into their own routine. And when they went 2-0 up, Hibs had a bit of a spell at the end of the first half and a bit at the end of the game. But in between times, I thought that, if you look at the overall game, I thought Rangers were pretty much in control for the whole of the game. One or two performances, maybe not up to par, but you have to remember where we're at in the season, and I think that's only natural, either through fatigue or wear and tear or the familiarity sometimes, that you think you just need to turn up and get the job done. And I think David's right, in terms of the team that was put out there. I think that was making a statement. But in as much as, if you guys think you're getting a rest, you're wrong. I want you playing the way you've played all season, and you're playing for the season. You're playing for a record, and you're also playing for whatever you do cup wise as well. So all in all, I think it's too easy this season to be critical of Rangers' performances because they just have been so consistent.
David, we started well today, I thought, and moved the ball about quite well. Roof had a sort of goal chopped off fairly early on, and I don't think there was any sort of debate about that. He looked well offside, and then the goal came. A really good finish from Aribo, but it's the sort of build-up play I would like to talk about. I thought Nathan Patterson's involvement in it. He could have whipped the ball in, but showed a wee bit of maturity actually, just to find Morelos, who he then cut it in, and it's felt to Aribo, and he took it well. So well worked and a good finish.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was sort of coming in that period, as you say. I think we were doing well, we were sort of playing well, and then the goal was the sort of just rewards for that. Good play again by Patterson, who has been a revelation, and it was good play by Morelos actually as well, because how many times in the past has he taken an extra touch or tried to shoot in a position like that, whereas he was trying to smash it across the face for someone else to pick up today, which was clever play, and you end up getting something out of it. And Aribo for me has been fantastic since the turn of the year, and it was a great volley. The thing, I mean, I thought Patterson again today was excellent, really, really good. The only big question mark for me over his development is, and I don't know, maybe it's a point of discussion, but what happens next season? You know, Tavernier's now signed a new deal. Tavernier's, going to start every week, rightly. So with Patterson playing, and Kevin Thompson who said something on commentary today about him being like Alan Hutton, and I think that would be accurate. I think his power and pace and eye for getting forward is really good, and I thought actually in defensive situations today was excellent as well. What happens with his development moving forward is the only thing that's maybe a question mark. How much game time does he get when Tavernier's fully fit? Because we all know when Tavernier's fully fit, he doesn't miss many games. So that'll be interesting. We'll maybe come back onto that point. But again, today I thought he was fantastic, and it's going to be really interesting to see if he sneaks into the Scotland squad for the Euros. Maybe comes just a wee bit too soon for him. But I think when you look at the options we've got in that position,
none.
There's every chance that he could stake a claim. But maybe this Euros will come a wee bit too quickly. But I wouldn't be surprised, after that if he becomes an option for Steve Clarke. But yeah, first goal was a lot to do with him, a lot to do with Morelos, and then Maribo finishes it off excellently.
Yeah, if he wants to play in a major tournament, he'll want to be selected for this one, because it'll be like 28 years before the next one. You know what I mean? Patterson will be the same age as me by the time Scotland next qualify for a major tournament. Stuart, coming back to yourself, towards the end of the first half, as we sort of mentioned earlier on there, came a bit ragged, became a bit slack, especially down that sort of our left-hand side, as David highlighted earlier on. Barisic, it just seemed to be a wee bit all over the shop today, and the boy Nisbet had a shot. Boyle, I'll have to say, I think McGregor had both of them, but they were both sort of warning shots, sort of across the bow. Hanlon maybe could have done better. He had a sort of header for the corner kick. So towards the end of it, I actually felt that Hibs could maybe snatch an equaliser, and it was a wee bit of a worrying time.
It was, but then again, I think you are looking for teams. It doesn't matter what team it is against what opposition. You're looking for a team to at least have their 5 minutes or 10 minutes of glory when they actually get on their game plan and take it to the opposition. And I thought that was Hibs' chance. And in terms of Barisic, I wondered, when he was going forward, there was a couple of times when he went forward. One, I thought he toiled to come back the way. I thought he was okay going forward, but he seemed to take a hell of a long time to get back into his normal position. And I also thought that Kamara at times didn't maybe track into that corner area to cover his the fullback who was going forward. I think we've noted it different times this season. When Tavernier has been going forward, the Rangers backline has aligned itself differently, and you've had maybe Davis, if he's playing between the two centre backs or drifting out to the right to cover that. And I don't think Rangers have the same coverage in that area today. And it just going back to the whole debate about right backs and all the rest of it. I do think that in terms of Patterson, he's the kind of guy who he doesn't go or press as far forward sometimes as Tavernier. Therefore, defensively, you don't need the same, how can I put it, panic, button to be hit if anything untoward happens. He seems to get back into that position as well. So there's a bit of an imbalance there because of the personnel changes that Rangers have had to cope with. But all in all, I still think the shots that they had, they weren't on target. They never, other than the free kick, I don't think that McGregor really had a big save to make, and that came, in the second half as well. So I thought Rangers were comfortable without being outstanding. And again, you put this one away, you take the 3 points and look forward to the next game. And the next game, in terms of Rangers and the season, is a big one.
See, in terms of that issue with Barisic, Stuart, is that, it's happened a couple of times this season. So obviously Rangers are looking for the fullbacks to push forward. there is much to do with how we attack as to how we defend. And, there's teams have targeted that at various points. Is this the kind of time when Ryan Jack would maybe make a wee bit difference? Someone who'd sit there and identifies that maybe someone's been, isolated a wee bit. There's space in behind, and just covering that a wee bit better than maybe Kamara's capable of doing.
Yeah, I think that's down to reading the game, and I think it's also down to the awareness of where players are on the pitch at any given point in time. That if somebody's filling a role, the thing with Rangers is because they play with the two widest men are the fullbacks. The wingers, if there's anybody playing out wide, tuck in. So Rangers are a very wide team, which means they don't have much depth behind that. If you get through that sort of, I would call it a big wing sort of scenario, it's almost like watching the USA going back to the 90s when they played a 3-6-1 formation. That's how wide they play. So these 6 guys in the midfield all doing different things at different times, but because they're so well organised, it works until such times as you expose it by putting 2 on 3 or 3 on 3, and then it looks a bit ragged. So everything in football is a compromise. I think Rangers, the way they play, pushing the fullbacks forward, you're always going to have moments. It's just about other people switching on and being aware of where the possible threat's going to come from.
David, the game, it was almost like a game of two halves. Within the two halves, Rangers started well in the first half and sort of faded towards the end of it, and it was kind of the same in the second half. We started really well, and the moment of the match probably came in that period with that goal for Ryan Kent. On his right foot, works it on his left, beats a couple of guys, cracks it into the bottom corner, and he can be quite a frustrating player, Ryan Kent. I think he's capable of being a wee bit reckless with possession and a bit wild with shooting and all the rest of it. And there are times you kind of tear your hair out with him, but he's capable of moments like that. You know what I mean? And that's why I think in every game, even when he's not playing well, he's occupying defenders. They are worried about what he's capable of, especially him being two-footed. You know what I mean? It's the way that was a goal to me that sums up what he's capable of. You know what I mean? He switches from side to side. He gets the ball on his right, shapes as if he's going down the right, switches on his left, cuts across one defender, cuts across another, and the shots to die for. Really, it's an absolute peachy finish.
He's I quite like. I just love everything about Ryan Kent. I think I say this all the time on here about him and Tavernier, but you'll never see him hiding in the game. You'll never see him not coming to demand the ball, and I think that's what makes a great player. I think it's easy, especially at Ibrox, and maybe not so much at the moment because there's no fans, but even before then, Kent was never one that would shy away. Even when he first came, and he sort of looked like a little scrawny teenager because his shirt too big for him and all that. But he was still doing it then. He was
looked like a bit of an head.
Aye, but I don't know what happened between him arriving and then him playing against Celtic in December 29th that first season. Because he seemed to just get a shirt that fitted him between that period, the first European games and that game.
I think he done what Scott Wright done. I think he bulked out a wee bit. I think that's what it is.
Aye, but no, it was a really fantastic goal, and I think it was very similar actually to the one he scored against St Mirren in terms of the strike and the way it went in the goal. But no, good stuff. And I thought in the game he was good. I thought he again demanded possession. He up to the very last minute, he was the one that was pressing the Hibs defence. He always puts the yards in. I think he's been fantastic this season. And yeah, another good goal. And it's good to see him actually getting on the score sheet a wee bit more, because he had a couple of months there where he was quiet, wasn't he, quite scoring as many as he had been at the start of the season. But yeah, starting to come back on the score sheet a bit more, and I think he's absolutely crucial to us and crucial to the way we play.
Stewart, again, as I said earlier on, first half started well, a bit slack towards the end of it. Same thing happened in the second half. It kind of felt the Hibs goal had been coming, and it came down sort of Barisic side again, a bit slack defensively. Cross came in, good header, Nisbet, to be fair. He took it well. I don't think there's much you say about McGregor in terms of, I don't think there's anything he could have done about it. But it made the last few minutes nervous. I must admit, at that point, since we've won it 5 weeks ago, and it's 5 weeks tonight since Rangers won the title, and it was snowing the day, for Christ's sake. That's how early we've won it. But there has, and I think since the exit from Europe, there has been a sort of the pressure's not there anymore. So coming into the game, you're quite relaxed, right? And see when it went 2-1, I actually said to myself, because I started to get a bit, oh my God, this is getting a bit twitchy. I was like, it'd have been absolutely horrific if we were still going for the title. 10 minutes to go, Hibs get a goal, and you're like, oh my God, the nerves would have been unbearable, because I found it quite nerve-wracking the day, and the title's wrapped up.
I think what the point that David made very early on this evening, that how little football Rangers have actually played in the last umpteen weeks, it seems to have been, been quite staccato, and you've got a game, then you're off for like 2 weeks, and you've got another game, then you're off for about another 2 weeks, and maybe a European game in between. I think it was maybe the fact to get this game under their belt against, admittedly, a more difficult, opponent will be a good thing. In terms of the nervousness, yeah, I can, I hear and see what you're saying, but it was, all in all, again, it was a performance that you're looking at. If the opposition score that late on in a game, you've pretty much done 90% of the job properly, and I think it's too easy to start, maybe picking up one or two small faults. Don't get me wrong. On another day, had any of the Hibs efforts gone in, then it might have been a bit more of a scramble. But I do think, all in all, it's about keeping players ticking over, keeping them fit, make sure there's no unnecessary bookings, red cards or injuries, and take it on to the next game. Because ultimately, there are 4 league matches still to be played this season. And, if they all finish 0-0, I don't think anybody would be sitting here on a Sunday evening saying, well, if Rangers had pushed a bit more, they might have won 1-0. You would take 4 0-0 draws right now to see it this season. And I think that's where Rangers are at.
David, a real controversial moment at the end there with Ryan Porteous' goal getting disallowed. And one thing I will say, that the whistle went fairly early on in proceedings. It wasn't like the ball went in the net and the ref blew. It was after sort of McGregor had saved it and then he blew. But I've watched it a couple of times, and it kind of feels to me that we might have got away with one there.
Yeah, I struggle with these sorts of decisions, especially corner type decisions, because I feel like every time, and this is a classic old football thing, but every time a corner's given that's a wee bit dodgy, and I can't remember actually if today's was dodgy, if it was a definite corner. But you know what it's like, every time the ref gives a corner and it's maybe a dodgy one,
he gives a free kick.
Gives a free kick.
Yeah.
So I don't ever like to get involved, because I think there's like shirt pulling and all sorts goes on every corner. So it's quite difficult to say. But yeah, I mean, maybe we did. But I think these things even themselves out, even over the 90 minutes. There's probably been a couple there that we didn't get. Maybe not that led to goals, but yeah, I mean, Jack Ross will maybe feel a bit hard done by, but that's just the nature of it, really, isn't it? If it had gone against us, we'd have been the same. So these sorts of situations, I feel there's always a bit of argy-bargy in the net.
Yeah. I think defenders are sort of tuned into, if they're maybe losing the flight of the ball, just go down.
Yeah.
Well,
if there's enough bodies in there, if you go down, the referee will maybe think, something's happened.
It's a bit like the goalies as well. If a goalie gets the ball and then drops it, but someone's challenging him, it's always a foul. And I think actually, if you watched any game of football at any level, really, there's always like weird things that you see that maybe. So like if Goldson's going up for a header and he misses the shot or the header towards goal, there's always a bunch of shirt pulling, players getting dragged down, players jumping on other one's shoulders, and nothing gets given. So, that is what it is.
Most of those decisions go on the benefit of of the defenders. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, speaking to Derek Johnson, and Derek, because of who he had in terms of the supply that was coming in, mostly say from Tommy McLean, who could quite literally drop the ball in a 1 yard circle wherever you wanted to be. Derek Johnson knew that if he arrived at that point in time as Tommy McLean was striking the ball, he was going to get to it, and he would just run for that spot. If defenders blocked him off or defenders got in the way, he played the game at a time where he could actually just run through them. Whereas today, guys block off strikers, and it's a foul immediately if a striker so much as grazes into a defender. And I also have to say today that, you know, I'm not sure what the Swedish equivalent of BAFTA is, or RADA perhaps, but if best man falls ever becomes an Olympic sport, I think that Rangers have got a guy there who would be a gold medal winner, because he was barely touched, and as David said, he knew exactly what the play was. If I get touched, I'm going down. Yeah. And the referee was calling for, I think he was calling for 2 fouls. He was calling for that one and then another one, and I have to say, neither, as far as, you know, to my mind, neither was actually a foul.
I mean, that point that David mentioned earlier on, I've seen it a few times, and there's been a couple of times I've been at the game with my boy, and you know, and if there's a contentious free kick outside the box or a corner kick, and the defending team are really protesting it, I've said to my boy, the minute the ball's in the air, the referee's going to blow for a free kick the other way, and on more than one occasion that happens. You know what I mean? I think the referee, if he thinks, all right, I might have got this wrong, he'll blow and give it the other way. I'm not saying that's what happened today, but I think that does happen. In terms of the goal, I don't really care, because it was Ryan Porteous, so get it right at him, because I can't suffer him anyway. You know what I mean? So, and you know, Hibs, get it up them. But I did, having watched it a couple of times, I'm not convinced there was much in it. But hey, we'll take it. Stuart, who David answered that one. Stuart, before the game today, I mean, obviously on Friday it was announced that Balogun had signed an extension, but Steven Gerrard announced today that he wasn't in the squad. Picked up, I think it's a calf injury, and he sort of hinted that he could be out for a few weeks. So, I mean, obviously, with the game coming up on what looks like it'll be Sunday now against Celtic, and then the following week we've got Celtic again. That's sort of a bad time to get that kind of a news.
It is, but again, I think there's been a different times this season. Goldson's been your kind of cornerstone defensively, hasn't he? And he's played through the season. He's played with 3, maybe off the top of my head, may actually been 4 different sort of partnerships in central defence. I think Goldson's obviously and evidently the main man. I still think that regardless of who Rangers put in there, they're still going to be a pretty solid unit. If anything, it would concern me more if somebody like Barisic wasn't able to play. I think that'd be more of a concern than who else was playing at centre back. But the way Rangers have formed defensively this season, they've always managed to do the job. The other big thing is who they've got behind them. It's almost like, well, if you do get through us, we've got McGregor behind us and you've still got to beat him. It's almost like, I suppose he is the last line, but what a last line to have. And ultimately, I don't think it concerns Rangers too much who they put in as that back 4. I think we've steered well clear now of any experimentation in terms of what if they play with a 3, or if Rangers play with a 3, it's usually during a game because they're pressing so far forward rather than lining up with a 3. But as a 4, I think they've been pretty solid this season.
Right, guys, before we move on to the next thing, I need to highlight our partnership with Football Prizes. So if you fancy winning a signed shirt from Joe Aribo, it's all custom framed, the current Castore kit. Very nice, actually. I'm looking at it here just now. There's 99 tickets available for £5.95. So if you fancy an opportunity of winning that, signed by Joe Aribo, custom framed. Log on to www.footballprizes.co.uk, and I'm sure Frankie will put the word out there on his Twitter feed as well. So if you fancy that, get on that. Guys, moving on, I thought we would have a wee discussion about John Kennedy and some of the stuff that he's been coming out with this week. Now, the first thing he said, he's kind of got involved with the sort of the ongoing issue with, Nathan Patterson, Bassey, Zungu, and the two sort of academy boys with the COVID stuff. And he sort of kicked off through the week, David, saying he didn't really understand, why it was taking so long. Ali McCoy has been quite vocal. He sort of sniped back at him in the media saying, it's none of his business. He needs to keep his nose out. Strange comments to make. And again, it seems like, I think Celtic are quite bad at this, or quite good, depending on what way you want to look at it. But it seems to me like they're sort of playing to the lowest common denominator in their support. The type that turns up at a football match, they've got no chance of gaining access to interrupt a minute silence, that kind of supporter.
Yeah, I thought a couple of things. I mean, I was going to say, it felt like he was pandering a wee bit. I don't know if they're his words or if they're words he's been fed by, the PR team or whatever. I don't know. I genuinely don't. Maybe it is his opinion. But I found it quite interesting because they obviously asked him about it yesterday because Gerrard had his right of reply, and he said, they asked me for my opinion, as in the journalist, so I gave it to them, which is quite interesting because how many times do we hear, it's not my place to get involved in another team's business. It's not my place. I'm not going to comment. That seemed like an interesting tactic to comment so openly about another club's business and what the processes that the SFA are going through with Rangers, because really it means nothing. Well, it should mean nothing to them, and that's always been the message, from Celtic and their PR over the past 4 or 5 years has been, we're not interested in Rangers. They mean nothing to us. We're only interested in ourselves. So for him to be so vocal through the week, it was quite interesting. It was an interesting change of tact, I think. And I think his point was a bit pointless, shall we say. I think, I don't know, it just seemed a bit... I did watch it. I watched what he said, or I read what he said, I can't remember. And I don't know, he's made a few comments like that, though. And I mean, we'll probably come on to it, but the comments yesterday, I mean, that really is pandering to the support and giving them just no end of, pish to spout. So,
in terms of Gerrard, David, I thought he was quite cute on Friday and how he handled it. I thought he handled it quite well. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I loved that. I thought it was good. And yeah, we're in a position of power now, which is the first time in how many years? We've been used to being the punch bags for so much, and just making the club just being made out to be the fools, because let's face it, in many occasions we have been with some of the stuff that's happened and been said. So it's quite interesting now, the sort of power shift in terms of the ones that are making headlines, that just make you cringe, and the ones that are being quite tactful in what they're saying. I thought Gerrard's stuff was good. I thought he handled it well. I think it was all fact. It was all, straight down the line, and everything he said wasn't trying to pander to us, I don't think. I think it was just reacting to, let's face it, a kind of needless jibes from the other side. So, no, it was good, and I did notice the wry smile on his face at the end because he knew what he was doing. And actually, another thing I enjoyed, because I was having a look through, normally how I keep up to date with the press conferences is I kind of go through Twitter and read the tweets. And I'd heard that he'd said something. I went through the tweets and I couldn't see it, but then the media team put out the full clip. And it was all they did on Twitter, the full clip of him discussing that. So that was quite good. But he's right. I mean, this is unprecedented times. And I think the players were dealt with by the club. The thing is, there's obviously a bit of tactical appealing here. There's no doubt about that. What was it? Was it 5 games straight 5 games for the players as well. So no suspended or.
Yeah, but that's what I liked about Gerrard's sort of retort. He kind of put his point across by agreeing with John Kennedy, given I feel his pain, by highlighting that, some of the punishments that have been handed out, with ball and goalie, and the whole Dubai thing just seems to have been swept under the carpet. You know what I mean?
I think the thing is, I can't remember who it was I was listening to through the week, but it was a player in Scotland, and they were talking about celebrating a big win. I can't remember who it was, but it was a player, and they were saying, we didn't really get a chance to do any of that because we were just straight back to the house because we're basically under house arrest.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to be, because I was actually thinking about it today, and I was thinking about the fact the Barbers had reopened. And I don't even know if the players can go to the Barbers if they've not get the resource of Rangers and Celtic and can get Barbers in their clubs. I'm not sure what the guidelines are there. So you're kind of thinking about, Jesus, they can't even do that. Don't know if they can go to the supermarket or anything, So there's a lot of, I can understand the frustration of players, and I think when at the time we were like, how stupid are these boys? And it was stupid, but I think you can, considering how many players that are in Scotland at the moment, for it only to be a handful, across the top flight that have been certainly caught doing anything stupid, I think you've got to commend the guys that have stuck to the rules. So it's a difficult one for the SFA, and I think they're sort of trying to be, I don't know what they're trying to do with some of these decisions, but I think they're trying to be relatively consistent, but they're failing miserably, and that's when the problems occur, because people can say, right, like John Kennedy or even Steven Gerrard, after that, and you can look at it and say, well, why did he get that and they get this? I think the biggest sticking point for me, and something we've probably discussed off air a few times, is the Celtic going to Dubai thing, and the fact that nothing came of that. I think that's sort of Rangers' joker card in this full thing. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Sure. As David sort of pointed out there, that Steven Gerrard, he did sort of straight bat it back at the press conference, and I thought he handled it very well. And as I said, he pointed out that it wasn't quite the way that John Kennedy was saying it was, by agreeing with him. I feel his pain, all that kind of thing, and that seemed to sort of upset a few people over in the East End of Glasgow, because not long after, later on in the afternoon, they released a statement saying, asking for more action, saying there have been a number of calls for consistency this season. Consistency is, quoted, we couldn't agree more. We have therefore sought clarification from the Scottish FA so that Scottish football can understand the approach in disciplinary cases in the interests of transparency and consistency. Now, given the COVID situation and the Dubai situation and all this, it does feel like the Celtic are standing there with a big brick and a very big glass house, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think if there was a time where trying to set the agenda or set the narrative on something has maybe backfired, it's probably on this matter. That you can say what you like, but equally there are, we can point the finger at you and come back at you for certain things, regardless of what was said and who said what. The one thing that I think Rangers fans are pretty happy with is the fact that, unlike previous incumbents, unlike the likes of Kaishina and Warburton, who would say, well, that's for another club and I don't really have anything to say on it. Steven Gerrard's quite happy to give you a square go in what you say, especially if you say anything about his players, his club, or infer anything to do with him. I think he's quite happy to have, a firefight of SAS proportions with you and continue it, because he's obviously a pretty switched on guy and a pretty clever guy as to what he actually says. He might not sometimes say a great deal, but then again, he doesn't have to, because he only needs to drop one sentence into a conversation and all of a sudden everybody's asking, oh, what did he mean by that? a lot of the time, you don't need to ask that because he's actually hit the nail on the head, and therefore he doesn't need to be long-winded and give the media or newspapers or whoever it is, screeds and screeds of quotes and comment. He'll say what he has to say and let it be done. And I do like that style about him. He reminds me a lot of Walter Smith, when Walter used to be asked questions and just used to look at you and wait for somebody else to ask another question. You didn't have to wonder if, or sit there thinking, I wonder what he's thinking, I wonder if that went down well. You pretty much knew when he just blanked you. And I listen, Steven Gerrard's nobody's fool. He's a big grown-up boy. And I think, given what he inherited at Rangers and given what he's achieved, I think it's probably naive of John Kennedy to think that he can suddenly sit in the big chair for like 5 weeks and be as good as the guy across the city when it comes to handling media or setting agendas.
I think he's underrated in how he handles the media, I must admit. I think he does it very, very well. He's got the ability to just get under people's skin. David, I'll get both your views on this one. To sort of compound Kennedy's week of talking absolute nonsense, he's come out yesterday and claimed that Celtic are still the best side in the country. Now, when you look at the league table, when you look at where we are in the calendar year, it's April, and as I said earlier on, we've been champions for 5 weeks. We've wrapped up the title quicker than Celtic were awarded it in a shortened campaign last year. It seems a bizarre comment. 20 points behind, a horrific European campaign, toughed out the Betfred Cup by Ross County. On the count of that, Rangers are currently unbeaten in the league, 33 games in. We got to the last 16 in the Europa League, only one defeat in the entire campaign. To come away with a comment like that seems fanciful at best, I think. Yeah,
I think he's tried to be like cute, and it's just came across just so poorly. What I will say, now this will be my only positive comment. They have a couple of decent players, a couple of good players who they'll probably sell for a few quid in the summer. But other than that, I mean, it just seems like they're clutching at straws massively here, and it's like, we've won the league. You've beat Livingston 6-0. Well done. It's that, and that seems to be. I remember when we went 1-0 behind against Motherwell in December, I was kind of rushing about because it was the lead up to Christmas. So I was keeping on top of the game, but I wasn't sitting watching it. And I saw the tweet before I saw the goal, saying Motherwell had scored, and a couple of Celtic fans had commented underneath saying, "Oh, the meltdown or the crumbling is happening now. See you in January, lads." And I thought, my first thought was, Jesus. But then when we won the game, it was like they were getting absolutely slaughtered after that in the comments. And I think that's been a constant of the season. I think there's still this feeling that as soon as they win a game, all of a sudden they're the best team in the world. And I feel like that, again, is roles reversed from where we were maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe before Gerrard, but, certainly even within that time frame, you look at when we beat Hearts at Tynecastle, Gerrard's first season, went top of the league for the first time in however many years, and we over-celebrated, and then we get punished for that. Last season at Parkhead, get punished for that as well. But now it seems to be any time they get a result, never mind against us or going top of the league, it's like this hysteria about how fantastic they are. I was listening, I'd open all mics on yesterday and I was out a walk, and Michael Stewart's talking about how James Forrest, he should be straight in the Euro squad because he scored against Falkirk and Livingston. David Turnbull, his words were another one who should be straight in the Scotland squad. I found it incredible, and it was, he kept coming on, it's another goal for Celtic. You're like, they're playing Livingston. No harm to Davy Martindale, who I think seems like a great guy, good coach. But Livingston are not in their best form. They're not in their best sort of frame of mind, I don't think, at the moment. So Celtic, beating Livingston it shouldn't be a cause to be declaring yourself the best team in the country, especially when we weren't on our game today and we still beat the third best team in the country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, pandering to, as you said, the lowest common denominator and this sort of try to rally the troops. John Kennedy to me is just a yes man who is saying anything and everything that the fans want to hear at the moment, and probably saying things that Lennon wouldn't have said, which, I don't know how that works for the fans of their club or other directors, but to me it just seems a bit silly. And I think in the cold light of day, when the coaching staff look back in those comments, they'll maybe think, Jesus, was that worth it, or does that just look stupid? And I think unfortunately they'll come to the conclusion it was probably worth it.
I'm sure I saw someone on Twitter today suggesting that if the Hibs goal had stood, the 10 was back on. That's the sort of level of delusion that some of them are living in, you know what I mean? Stewart, what about yourself in terms of Kennedy saying that, they're still the best team? It seems a bit ludicrous.
I think he's possibly saying this because he realises that he has to try and engender some kind of urgency from the players he's actually looking at, who have got absolutely sod all left in the tank. And he's got 2 games. If he's got any ambition whatsoever of staying at Celtic or being the next Celtic manager, he needs 2 performances. And, as I said all the way through, what David was saying there, when I was on Talk Sport and the lights and people were saying, Celtic have got 2 games in hand, 3 games in hand, 4 games in hand, there was nothing this season that was ever have suggested that Celtic could win 2 matches in the spin, let alone 3 or 4. And I think John Kennedy has come out with this kind of narrative that trying to G up his own players. Now, if you look at that Celtic team, you have guys in there who, for want of a better description, are D-mob happy. There are guys who don't want to be there, guys who know they are not going to be there, and guys who have chosen to leave being there in that team already. He's got to come up with something over the next 90 minutes or the next 180 minutes to put himself in a position where he looks as if he's got some authority. And he's also a guy who can come out and basically, take a pot shot at just about anybody, because he doesn't know whether he's going to get kept on or whether there's another manager coming in. The fact that you've got the actual club manager coming out, or acting club manager coming out and saying to Celtic fans, I think you should be patient, only goes to show what is coming out from upstairs just now, which is nothing. There is nobody coming out and saying with any kind of clarity that this is where we're going, this is the direction we're headed in, and this is who you might be getting. So he's actually, there's an element of me that feels kind of sorry for him, that he's actually coming out and doing the job of chief executives and directors just now, because that's what he's having to do. And, he can say these things, but ultimately, if you're coming out and saying that we are still the best team in the country, okay, then you've got 2 games coming up, go prove it, because you've had a whole season to do it and you've not managed it. And I think he's painted himself into a bit of a corner here.
Yeah, and I think he's also provided Steven Gerrard with, something for his team talk, you know what I mean? Strange comments, as you say. It's maybe all about pandering and season ticket renewals are due and all that kind of thing. I don't know, but I just think when you're 20 points behind and you've had a disastrous season, it was a strange comment to come out with. Guys, looking at the time, we're sort of approaching the end here. So before we finish up, I was going to try and get your top 3. I was going to have a wee discussion about sort of player of the year. And I was going to ask you for your top 3, but I think we're a bit tight time-wise. So if you can just give me who you think your player of the year is for this year and why, and we'll see if we've got any sort of consensus on this year. So David, over to you first.
Well, Connor Goldson for me, most consistent player, played every game, has been a rock at the centre of defence and shown incredible leadership in the past few weeks especially. So easy one for me, Connor Goldson.
Who, just quickly, who was 2 and 3?
Tavernier, number 2. And I was sort of weighing up the number 3. And I was thinking about, did I just go for who the consensus would be? But I think if I was going for someone who I've enjoyed watching all season, who's got me on the edge of my seat, who is constantly put in performances that have helped the team, then I'd probably go for Ryan Kent, because I think he's started the season really well, and I think he's finishing the season really well, and he's one that I just love watching. So if I'm going for two sensible, 1 and 2, my third sort of wild card would be Ryan Kent.
Okay. Stewart, who are you going for Player of the Year at Rangers this year?
In reverse order, number 3 would be Goldson. I think he's been an absolute rock defensively. To use the Craig Brown line, he's got a head like a magnet when it comes to the ball, and that's in both penalty boxes. Really, a real winner. Second would be Tavernier. I think it's amazing. It doesn't take very long for you to be forgotten about in football. And I think already, because of the performances of others, Tavernier and what he did at the start of the season is almost like a distant memory, because he hasn't been there for so many weeks, which is a shame, because I think he was a nail on for the Player of the Year. But number 1 for me would be my Player of the Year, and I've said it, I ain't going to change, simply because I know the effort that goes in to making yourself as good as he is, and that's Alan McGregor.
Interesting. Well, I'll give you my 3. Number 3 for me would be Tavernier. I think he's been outstanding, and the reason he only comes in at number 3 is the issue that you've raised, Stuart. He's missed a good chunk towards the end of the season. So in terms of appearances, I think that just goes against him. Number 2, I would go with Connor Goldson. I just think he's been outstanding. Played every minute of the whole season, of every game. He's this sort of rock, as David said there, the linchpin in that defence. But for me, he's not been mentioned yet. For me, the Player of the Year for Rangers this season, without any shadow of a doubt, has been Stephen Davis. I just think he's been outstanding. I think he's a guy that just keeps us ticking along, and I think the fact that he's played so much football, I think he's played more football than was planned, because of the injury to Ryan Jack and all the rest of it. And I think there would have maybe been, I think at the start of the season, if someone came back and said to Steven Gerrard, by the way, I've went to May and this is how many games Stephen Davis plays, I think Steven Gerrard would have been quite concerned at that. I don't think they would have planned to have given him that amount of game time, but he's handled it well. And it's not just that, he's been playing with his country as well. So Stephen Davis for me. So
I think this is a bold claim, but I think we possibly have a Stephen Davis replacement waiting in the wings, and Stephen Kelly. I think he could be the man that comes in to replace Davis long term. I've seen a wee bit of him at Ross County, and been reading a wee bit about him, especially what John Hughes has been saying, and it seems like he's very well thought of as being one of County's best players, albeit they're struggling, but seems like a born winner, someone that's that really gives his all for County at the moment. I think, given the profile of him, the way he plays, I think he could be a long-term replacement for Davis. And it'll be interesting to see if we keep Stephen Kelly next season, or send him out on loan again. But I think, having watched a wee bit of him and seen what he's all about, I think, he could be the one that steps in and fills that void when Davis eventually retires.
Just on the Player of the Year, we've got two. You've got football writers and you've got the Players Player of the Year, and we've listed. I know we've touched upon this before. I could not see past Davis, Tavernier, Goldson, and McGregor myself. I think if anybody from any other club manages to get in on the short list, it is entirely for political reasons and nothing else. I think, I'll be absolutely honest, this is, the Rangers players and the Rangers squad have dominated this season and been so good. I really don't, I cannot think of anybody off the top of my head that you would actually say, this guy's got a chance of actually displacing any of those people for all the reasons that we've given. So watch this space and see who actually ends up in the various short lists.
Scott Brown will win it, you know what I mean? Because all his pals will vote for him.
Robbie Nielsen will be on the manager of the year. Guaranteed.
That's all because Anne Budge's fired us in a couple of cases of champagne each.
And I think Robbie Nielsen is a fitting way to end this week's show. So a big thanks to David and Stewart. Great stuff from them as always. We'll have a preview show out on Friday. Obviously, we don't know when the Rangers Celtic game is next week. That's been reviewed at the moment. I suspect it will probably be the Sunday, but whenever it is, we'll have a preview show out to cover that, and we'll be back next week with the flagship show to look at how we got on in that cup game. In the meantime, get yourself over to the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Easy for me to say. Until next time, guys, stay safe and bye for now.